The world had never seen anything like this before. A dark shadow stretched across the skies, its ominous presence looming over Earth like a storm waiting to break. For weeks, strange reports came in from all corners of the globe. First, it was just a flicker on radar screens. Then it was a strange transmission, garbled words in an alien tongue. No one knew where they came from, but one thing was certain. Earth was no longer alone in the universe. Governments and scientists scrambled to make sense of the situation. The United Nations called an emergency session, with leaders from every country sitting in tense silence. They had received a message, one that sent shivers down the spine of every person who heard it. "We are the Vreshen, and your world is next." The words echoed in the minds of all who heard them. The Vreshen were not a name Earthlings had ever encountered in their long years of space exploration. They were something new, something terrifying. The first attack came without warning. A small fleet of ships, sleek and dark, descended from the sky. They moved faster than anything humanity had ever seen. Their weapons were like nothing Earth had ever encountered, powerful beams that disintegrated entire buildings with a single strike. The cities they targeted were reduced to rubble, and millions perished in the blink of an eye. The death toll rose so quickly that the world struggled to grasp the enormity of the attack. It was clear now. The Vreshen were not here to make peace. They had come to conquer. In the early days of the invasion, the world tried to fight back. Humanity's military forces, though advanced in technology, were no match for the overwhelming power of the alien invaders. Fighter jets, missiles, and laser cannons fired at the Vreshen ships, but nothing seemed to harm them. Each time humanity tried to push back, the Vreshen retaliated with brutal force, destroying entire battalions in moments. In the middle of all this chaos, a man named Dr. Adrian Hargrove, one of Earth's top scientists, sat in a secure underground facility, studying the data coming in from every corner of the planet. His team had been working on the alien signal, trying to decipher its meaning. The message was clear. They were not just attacking Earth. They were preparing for something far worse. "We need to understand them," Dr. Hargrove muttered to his team. "If we can't communicate, we can't defend ourselves." But as the days passed, it became clear that the Vreshen didn't want to talk. Their message was simple: surrender or perish. As humanity struggled to organize a defense, the Vreshen showed no signs of stopping. Reports came in of entire countries falling into chaos as governments crumbled under the weight of the alien assault. Cities burned, and the sky was filled with smoke and dust. People feared for their lives, unsure of what to do. Yet, even as everything seemed to fall apart, something stirred within the human spirit. Humanity had always been resilient. Even when it seemed as though all hope was lost, there was a deep, unyielding belief that they would survive. At the heart of the resistance were not just the world's armies, but the ordinary people who refused to be silenced by the alien threat. Across the globe, survivors came together: scientists, engineers, soldiers, and civilians, all united in a single cause: to fight for their planet, no matter the cost. The first signs of resistance appeared in the form of small, coordinated strikes against the Vreshen's ground forces. A group of rebels, armed with whatever they could find, managed to sabotage a Vreshen transport ship. It wasn't much, but it was a victory, something to prove that humanity was not going down without a fight. In the chaos, Dr. Hargrove and his team worked tirelessly, searching for any weakness they could exploit. They began to piece together information from the Vreshen technology and quickly realized that the invaders were not invincible. The aliens had vulnerabilities just as humans did. It was only a matter of time before humanity could fight back with everything they had. "I know we've been dealt a heavy blow," Dr. Hargrove said during one of the many briefings, "but we're not defeated. The Vreshen might have the upper hand, but they underestimate us. That's their mistake." In the halls of the United Nations, world leaders finally put aside their differences. The fate of the planet was at stake, and the time for bickering was over. Resources were pooled together to create a unified global defense force. Every country sent their best soldiers, engineers, and scientists to work on finding a way to stop the Vreshen. The people who had once feared each other now stood side by side in their fight for survival. The world's military leaders, led by General Natalia Vickers of the United States, began planning counteroffensives. But it wasn't just the military that held hope. Civilians, scientists, engineers, teachers, doctors, formed their own makeshift organizations, finding ways to contribute to the fight. Some repaired damaged defense systems, while others worked on new weapons. The spirit of cooperation spread across the globe, and for the first time since the attack began, there was a sense of unity. Humanity's greatest strength is its ability to adapt, General Vickers said in one of her speeches to the global resistance. We may not have the advanced weaponry of the Vresian, but we have something they don't: determination. Meanwhile, the Vresian, although powerful, seemed to grow increasingly confident. They believed that their victory was inevitable. They had underestimated humanity's resolve, and that would be their downfall. Despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's defenders fought back with everything they had. Every day, more and more humans joined the cause. It didn't matter where they came from, China, Brazil, Russia, or Kenya. Humanity united in the face of annihilation. The Vresian, with their advanced weaponry and technology, were not prepared for this. For the first time in the invasion, they faced resistance unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was in that moment, when the world seemed to be at its lowest, that humanity's true power began to emerge. Even as the cities burned and the skies darkened with alien ships, one thing was clear, Days passed since the first attack, and Earth was still reeling from the destruction. Every major city had been hit, and millions were either dead or missing. The Vresian had launched their assault with overwhelming force, and humanity was fighting to survive. But even in the darkest hours, there was hope. Dr. Adrian Hargrove and his team had uncovered a critical weakness in the Vresian's technology. But time was running out. The Vresian were regrouping for another wave, one that could very well spell the end for humanity. The world's leaders, including President Maria Delgado of the United States and General Natalia Vickers, had called for an emergency meeting, hoping to find a way to counterattack. The United Nations General Assembly had convened in a hastily constructed underground facility, one far from the alien weapons. World leaders and military officers from every nation were present, including a handful of representatives from the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful species, had been contacted shortly after the Vresian's arrival. Humanity had hoped that these galactic powers would come to Earth's aid. For years, Earth had been a member of the Council, though it had always been considered a less advanced species compared to the others. Still, Earth had earned respect for its growing technological prowess and its willingness to cooperate. Yet, when the Vresian arrived, there was no immediate help. No fleet of galactic ships came to Earth's defense. It was a cold, hard truth that Earth would have to fight alone. As the meeting continued, the voices of world leaders echoed in the room. Tension was thick in the air with no clear solution. Then at last, a transmission from the Galactic Council was received. The image on the large screen flickered as the representatives of the Council appeared, their alien features clear and distinct. The lead representative, a tall, slender being with shimmering silver skin and eyes that seemed to pierce through the very soul, spoke in a calm, emotionless tone. "We understand the gravity of the situation on Earth," the representative began, "but the Vresian are a far-reaching threat. The Council has determined that it is not in our best interest to interfere with this conflict." The room fell into stunned silence. "What do you mean?" General Vickers demanded, stepping forward. "You are the Galactic Council. You've always promised to protect us from threats like this. The Vresian are systematically destroying Earth. We need your help." The representative's eyes glowed faintly, and for a moment it looked like they might express some form of empathy. But instead they simply responded, "The Vresian are beyond our reach. The Council has chosen not to intervene in this particular matter. You must handle this conflict yourselves." The words felt like a slap in the face. The hope that had flickered inside the humans began to dim. How could the Galactic Council just abandon Earth? How could they turn their back on a member of their own alliance? President Maria Delgado stood, her face tight with disbelief and anger. Are you telling us that we are on our own? That no one in the galaxy will help us? That we must fight for our survival alone? The Galactic Council remained silent, and it was clear that their answer was final. You are correct, the representative finally said. The Vreshen are formidable, but your species has always shown resilience. Perhaps it is time for you to prove that again. The Council's hands are tied. It was a betrayal. Earth had trusted the Council, believing that as part of a larger galactic network, they would never be left to face extinction alone. But now, that trust had been shattered. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the leaders of Earth in stunned silence. It was as if the floor had been pulled from under them. All that was left was a cold, empty space where hope had once been. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, General Vickers broke the silence. This is not over, she said firmly. We will not beg for help. Earth will survive, and we will make sure that no species, not even the Vreshen, will ever forget the strength of humanity. President Delgado nodded, her expression hardening. If the Council won't help us, then it's time we make them regret their decision. We will defend this planet, no matter the cost. We will fight until the last breath. Until every human is either dead or standing tall. The room filled with murmurs of agreement. The human spirit was not so easily crushed. Even without the support of the Galactic Council, humanity would not bow to anyone. As the meeting continued, plans were made. The resistance movement grew, and scientists worked day and night to adapt the Vreshen technology for human use. New weapon was being developed, one that would harness the alien energy they had captured from the initial attacks. It was humanity's last chance, and they would throw everything they had into it. The resistance fought on every front. In cities, ravaged by the Vreshen, survivors joined forces to strike back. From the deserts of Africa to the icy tundras of Russia, humans fought back using whatever they could. Improvised weapons, guerrilla tactics, and the power of their own will to survive. Across the globe, nations that had once been divided by borders now worked together as one. Earth's armies, now united under a single cause, began to push back. But it was no easy task. The Vreshen's technology was unlike anything Earth had ever seen, and their warships continued to dominate the skies. The first major victory came from a group of civilians, led by an unlikely hero, Alex Ramos, a former engineer-turned-resistance fighter. They had managed to destroy a small Vreshen supply ship in the jungles of South America. It wasn't much, but it was enough to reignite the fire of hope in the hearts of Earth's defenders. Humanity had proven that they could defeat the Vreshen, and they would do so again. Meanwhile, Dr. Hargrove's team, working tirelessly, made another breakthrough. The alien energy used by the Vreshen seemed to have a weakness, a flaw in the way their weapons generated power. If humanity could exploit this flaw, they might stand a chance against the Vreshen's deadliest weapons. The realization was both a triumph and a warning. Time was running out. The Vreshen were preparing their next assault, one that could wipe out what was left of humanity. But even with the odds stacked against them, Earth was not going down without a fight. Humanity had been betrayed by the Galactic Council, but that betrayal would only fuel their determination. The Vreshen had underestimated Earth, and now humanity's might was ready to rise to the occasion. The battle for survival had just begun. This completes part 2 of In the Face of Extinction, Humanity's Might Refused to Falter. Let me know if you'd like any changes or want to proceed with the next part of Faromini. The first victory came when no one expected it. The world had been reeling from the brutality of the Vreshen's attacks, but just as humanity's hope was beginning to fade, something remarkable happened. A small group of soldiers, engineers, and civilians working together had pulled off something that seemed impossible. They managed to strike back against the Vreshen. It wasn't much, just a small transport ship, one of the Vreshen's many supply vessels. But it was enough to prove that the Vreshen weren't invincible. They were far stronger than Earth's military forces, but humans had something the Vreshen hadn't counted on: determination. The plan had been risky. It started in a quiet corner of the South American jungle, where a resistance group, led by a former soldier named Alex Ramos, had uncovered a weak spot in one of the Vretian supply ships. The group had gathered makeshift weapons, old guns, improvised explosives, and even a few scraps of alien technology they'd managed to scavenge. It was an odd collection, but it worked. Alex and his team had planned the attack for weeks, using the dense jungle to hide from the Vretian patrols. Their objective was simple: destroy the supply ship, slow down the Vretians' progress, and send a message to the invaders: humanity would not be easily defeated. On the night of the attack, the group moved swiftly through the jungle, staying out of sight of the Vretian surveillance systems. The supply ship, surrounded by Vretian guards, was parked in a clearing. It was larger than anything humanity had ever seen, but it was also vulnerable. The Vretian had underestimated the human ability to strike in unexpected ways. At the moment of attack, Alex's heart raced. The explosives were set and the team was in position. There was no turning back now. With a single signal, the team launched their assault. The Vretian were caught by surprise. Explosions rocked the ground as the improvised bombs went off, sending shockwaves through the area. The Vretian guards scrambled to respond, but the humans were quick and precise. They fought with everything they had, using their surroundings to their advantage. The battle didn't last long. The Vretians' technology was powerful, but their troops were scattered and unprepared for the guerrilla tactics humanity employed. In the end, the humans managed to destroy the supply ship, sending it up in flames. The mission was a success, small but significant. Back at their base, Alex and his team were hailed as heroes. The destruction of the Vretian ship was a major victory, but it was also a symbol. Humanity had shown that they could fight back. It was a glimmer of hope in a war that seemed all but lost. News of the victory spread quickly, and it inspired people across the world. Governments, once paralyzed by fear, began to take action. The world's leaders, despite their earlier despair, rallied behind a new plan. They would unite every resource, every soldier, and every scientist to stop the Vretian. Humanity's spirit had been reignited. Dr. Adrian Hargrove, the scientist who had been working on deciphering the Vretian technology, was now on the front lines. He had a breakthrough, a method to harness the Vretians' energy weapons and adapt them for human use. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Dr. Hargrove's team worked day and night, rapidly developing weapons that could stand up to the Vretians' overwhelming power. General Vickers, who had been leading humanity's military efforts, knew that the fight was far from over. The Vretian were regrouping and they would come back stronger than ever. Earth's military forces had to be ready. The first step was to reinforce humanity's defenses. New battle strategies were developed, and soldiers were trained in combat tactics that could match the Vretians' technological superiority. But the most important thing, General Vickers knew, was to keep the momentum going. The victory in South America was just the beginning. Humanity had proved that it could fight back, and now it had to keep proving that the Vretians' dominance was not permanent. Across the globe, resistance groups formed, and the human effort grew larger. People from all walks of life joined the cause. Scientists worked on adapting alien technology, while engineers built new weapons and systems. Civilians fought back with whatever they had, from small arms to improvised explosives. The battle was now as much about ingenuity as it was about strength. In the United States, President Maria Delgado addressed the nation, speaking directly to her people and to the world. "We've taken our first step," she said, her voice steady. "We've shown the Vretian that we will not be broken. We've proven that they can be defeated. But this is just the beginning. We will continue to fight. We will continue to push forward. And we will win." Her words were broadcast to every corner of the globe. People gathered in the streets, cheering for the human spirit that refused to be extinguished. The world was united in the belief that they could overcome the Vretian. But as the days passed, the Vretian regrouped. They were not an enemy to be underestimated. They retaliated with increased force, sending a massive fleet to Earth's orbit. It was clear they had learned from their mistakes. The next battle would be even more brutal, and humanity would need to be ready. General Vickers began preparing for the worst. Her strategies grew bolder. She knew that Earth's survival depended on every nation, every soldier, and every person, working together as one. The fight would not be easy, but humanity had shown it could win, even when the odds seemed impossible. The success of the South American operation had sparked something in every human heart, the belief that they could overcome the greatest threats the galaxy had to offer. The Vresian may have the technology, but humanity had something stronger, their will to survive. And as the Vresian prepared for their next assault, humanity was ready. They would not give up. They would not falter. The battle for Earth had just begun, and the humans were determined to fight until the very end. The victory in South America had brought a much-needed sense of hope to humanity. The world had been on the brink of despair, but the small success had sparked something powerful in the hearts of Earth's defenders. For a brief moment, the fear that had gripped every nation eased. People believed that Earth could still survive. However, the Vresian were not the kind of enemies who would retreat after a single defeat. They were ruthless, calculating, and always learning from their failures. As humanity celebrated its victory, the Vresian were preparing for their next move, a much stronger response. The alien forces regrouped, sending out a fleet of warships, far larger and more advanced than any humanity had faced before. The ships were massive, their black, gleaming hulls stretching across the sky like dark mountains. The Vresian had learned from the first strike, and now they were coming in full force. General Natalia Vickers stood at the command center, watching the Vresian fleet appear on the radar. Her expression remained calm, but inside a cold determination was building. The victory in South America had shown them that the Vresian were not invincible, but this was going to be a much tougher battle. The Vresian had far more advanced weapons and their numbers were overwhelming, but humanity wasn't going to back down. "We need to move fast," General Vickers said, her voice firm. "The Vresian are coming, and they'll be here sooner than we think. We have to act before they get the chance to strike." Her team was already working, quickly putting the plans into motion. Earth's defenses had been strengthened since the last attack, but the Vresian's new fleet was unlike anything humanity had encountered before. The warships were armed with advanced energy weapons capable of decimating entire cities in a single blast. It was clear that this wasn't just another attack, it was a full-scale invasion. Dr. Adrian Hargrove, working alongside the military, had made some important breakthroughs in adapting the Vresian technology. However, despite their efforts, humanity's weapons still weren't enough to match the overwhelming power of the Vresian fleet. But Dr. Hargrove wasn't giving up. He had one more idea, something risky, but it could give humanity the edge they needed. "We can't fight fire with fire," Dr. Hargrove explained as he briefed General Vickers. "But we can use their own tactics against them. We've found a weakness in their power sources. If we can infiltrate their ships and disable their energy systems, it will neutralize their weapons. They won't be able to fight back." It was a risky plan. The Vresian were known for their tight security, and the idea of infiltrating their warships seemed almost impossible. But there was no time to waste. Humanity had already seen what the Vresian were capable of, and they knew that if they didn't act quickly, the entire planet could be lost. The operation was launched, and a small team of elite soldiers was sent to infiltrate the Vresian fleet. Among them was Alex Ramos, the leader of the group that had destroyed the supply ship in South America. He was a natural leader, calm under pressure, and had earned the respect of everyone around him. This mission would require all his skills, and he knew the risks. If they failed, it could mean the end of Earth's resistance. The team was dropped into the heart of the Vresian fleet, deep in enemy territory. They moved silently through the vast expanse of warships, using the advanced cloaking technology they had reverse-engineered from the Vresian's own systems. Every step was calculated. They couldn't afford to make a mistake. As they approached the Vresian flagship, the team split into two groups. One would infiltrate the ship's main power core, while the other would provide a distraction to draw attention away from their mission. The clock was ticking. Every moment they spent on the Vresian ship was a risk, But they had no other choice. "Stay focused," Alex whispered to his team. "We can't afford to get caught. If we do, it's over." The operation was tense, filled with moments of uncertainty. The Roshin were everywhere, their patrols moving in and out of the corridors. But the human team remained unseen, their movements quick and deliberate. They reached the main power core of the ship, a massive chamber filled with glowing energy, conduits and alien machinery. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "This is it," Alex said, his voice steady but with a hint of excitement. "Let's make it count." They set the charges. Every second felt like an eternity as the countdown to detonation began. If they succeeded, they would cripple the Vresian fleet, giving humanity a chance to retaliate. If they failed, they would be trapped on the ship, unable to escape. Suddenly, alarms blared. The Vresian had discovered them. The soldiers sprang into action, running through the corridors, dodging alien guards as the countdown neared its end. The tension in the air was thick. Every step they took felt like a race against time. As the team reached the extraction point, the explosion shook the ship. The Vresian's power core had been disabled, and with it, their weapons went offline. The fleet was no longer a threat. Humanity had won this round. However, the victory came at a heavy price. The explosion had drawn the attention of the entire Vresian fleet. Alex and his team barely escaped, but many others had not. They had lost comrades, brave men and women who gave everything for the mission. Back on Earth, General Vickers watched the battle unfold on the command center's screens. The Vresian fleet, once a powerful force, was now crippled. Humanity had struck a blow. The victory was theirs, but it was bittersweet. Many lives had been lost, and the war was far from over. But humanity's resolve had only grown stronger. The Vresian had underestimated them. They thought they could wipe out Earth without resistance. They were wrong. "We have just begun," General Vickers said, her voice unwavering. "The Vresian thought they could break us. But we're not going down without a fight, not now, not ever." Humanity's first real victory against the Vresian was a turning point. It showed the world that they could fight back, that the Vresian weren't invincible. The war was far from over, but for the first time humanity could see a light at the end of the tunnel. They had proven they were not helpless in the face of extinction, and they would not falter. The victory against the Vresian fleet had been a turning point, but the cost had been high. The battle had been won, but at the price of many lives. Humanity had struck a serious blow to the invaders, but the war was far from over. The Vresian had learned from their defeat, and they would not make the same mistake again. They would come back with even greater force. Despite the growing danger, humanity's resistance only grew stronger. The defeat had sparked something powerful within Earth's people. Governments, once on the edge of collapse, were now united in their resolve. People from every nation were working together to find new ways to fight back. The resistance movements, once small and scattered, were now vast and organized. Across the world, humans had come together to fight for their survival. In the underground cities, soldiers trained tirelessly. Engineers worked day and night, building new weapons and fortifying defenses. Civilians who had once been fearful now joined the cause, using their skills to help in any way they could. The world was beginning to look more like a single united force, rather than a collection of separate nations. General Vickers stood at the command center watching as reports came in from the field. Earth's forces were spreading across the globe, fighting on every front. Some of the battles were small, but each one mattered. Each victory, no matter how small, sent a message to the Vresian. Humanity would not surrender. "It's working," General Vickers said, her voice filled with determination. "We're turning the tide." Dr. Adrian Hargrove, the scientist who had been working with the military, was also growing more confident. His team had successfully adapted some of the Vresian's technology for human use. They had found ways to weaponize their energy sources, turning the Vresian's own weapons against them. It was a major step forward, but Dr. Hargrove knew that they still had a long way to go. "We need more time," Dr. Hargrove said to General Vickers as he walked into the command center. "We've made progress, but we need to build more weapons. If we're going to fight back effectively, we need more resources." General Vickers nodded. "I know, but we don't have time. The Russian are already preparing for their next attack. They won't give us a break. At that moment, the commander of one of the human fleets, Captain Emily Thomas, sent a report about the Russians' movements. The enemy was regrouping, and their next assault was expected to be much larger than before. But Captain Thomas's report also brought something else, something unexpected. "We've captured one of their ships," she reported. "It's heavily damaged, but we've got a small crew working on it. We might be able to reverse engineer it. If we can do that, we'll have a huge advantage." Dr. Hargrove's eyes lit up. This could be it. This is exactly what we need. The human forces immediately began working on the captured Russian ship. It was a slow and painstaking process, but the team's optimism grew with each new discovery. They uncovered new technologies, hidden weapon systems, and even some parts of the ship that could be used to enhance Earth's own defenses. While scientists worked on the Russian ship, the soldiers continued to fight across the globe. The resistance movements were growing, and humanity's forces were now better equipped and better organized. Cities that had once been devastated by the Russians' weapons were being rebuilt, and slowly, the world began to feel more like it was fighting a war rather than just surviving one. Alex Ramos, the hero of the South American victory, had been leading a team of resistance fighters in Africa. They had been conducting small-scale raids against the Russian supply lines, slowing their advance. But as the Russian regrouped, it became clear that humanity's forces couldn't win through small victories alone. They needed a larger coordinated strike. "We're getting close to their main supply hub," Alex said as he gathered his team. "This could be the big one. If we can take out their supply lines, we can cripple their forces." The team had one goal: to destroy the Russian Central Command Center. The Russian were relentless, but the human resistance had learned to fight smart. Alex's team infiltrated enemy lines, avoiding detection and using the element of surprise to their advantage. They moved fast, cutting through Russian defenses with precision and efficiency. The operation was dangerous. As they reached the heart of the Russians' base, alarms blared. The Russian had found them. But by that point it was too late. The team had already planted the explosives that would take out the Central Command. "Get out now," Alex shouted as the countdown began. The team ran, the sounds of explosions and collapsing walls echoing behind them. The Russians' command center was destroyed in a massive explosion, sending shockwaves through their forces. It was a victory that would go down in history as one of the turning points of the war. Back at the command center, General Vickers and Dr. Hargrove received word of the success. "This is exactly what we needed," Dr. Hargrove said. "With their command center destroyed, the Russian are disorganized. We can push forward now." The news of the attack spread like wildfire across the globe. Humanity had dealt another heavy blow to the Russian, and for the first time since the invasion began, it seemed like Earth might have a chance. But even as the celebration began, General Vickers remained focused. "This isn't over. We've won some battles, but the war is still ahead of us. We need to be ready for whatever the Vratian throw at us next." She was right. The Vratian were relentless. But humanity had something they didn't: the will to survive. And as the world united, the human resistance grew stronger. Every day brought new victories, new breakthroughs, and new hope. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain. Humanity's might had refused to falter. They had fought back against the most powerful enemy the galaxy had ever known, and they were still standing. And they would keep standing until Earth was free.